Well, that's killing.
Thank you.
That's really spoken. Everyone, please welcome Cecile McLorin Salvant.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
This is
Woo! Yes.
it's great to have you here, and congratulations on receiving the Doris Duke Performing Artist Award a few weeks ago, and then the MacArthur I think last week. That's really really amazing, and we're going to have a different conversation about awards a little bit later because I think that the students especially are very curious about that. But you won the Monk competition in 2010. You have 3 Grammys under your belt. You won the Glenn Gould Protege Prize, awarded by Jesse Norman. I think that's really cool. I didn't even know that award existed. And a bunch of other things. So, congratulations on all of that. I think you're
Thank
doing
you.
amazing things in this music, to this music, within this music, next to this music. So we're happy to have you here. So I think your background is really interesting. Just your upbringing and kind of your trajectory into getting into this music, and so why don't we start there? I mean, you grew up in a very multicultural sort of household. You're listening to a lot of different kinds of music. Can you just tell us a little bit about that, like where you grew up and?
Sure. So both my parents are immigrants. My mom is French. My dad is Haitian. Um, they both loved music and all kinds of music, and particularly my mom. My mom never really had a hometown. She traveled from from like she was born in Tunisia. She lived all through Africa. She lived in the Dominican Republic and Haiti, in South America and Bolivia, Honduras. She traveled a whole lot in her childhood with her family, and I think picked up this sort of eclecticism in culture, in food, and music, and brought it to our home in Miami. And so growing up, there was um, so much different music. And I think that was more formative than anything. The fact that everything was mixing together at the same time. So we were listening to jazz, we were listening to the great jazz singers, Sarah Vaughan, Nancy Wilson, etc. But there was also a lot of Cesaria Evora. There was Paraguayan and Uruguayan folk music, and Caribbean music of all kinds, Haitian music. There was a lot of bluegrass and Appalachian music, um, and so I, from a super young age, I remember being surrounded by all of that, and also taking piano lessons from the age of 3, classical, or I guess it's not classical if you're 3, it's just 1, 2, 3, um, so doing that, um, and then when I think about 11, I sang in a children's choir, and I was always drawn to like really powerful voices, and really I would say virtuosic voices. I mean, I feel like that's evolved, but I can talk about that later. But when I was younger, I really I wanted, I was so attracted to like these vocal gymnasts, and I think classical voice and opera was like, to me, the ultimate expression of just like, let's just push the voice to the max, in terms of technique and volume and dramatic expression. And I remember, this is a really weird way to decide this, but I saw this singer named Charlotte Church on TV. She was probably on Oprah or
Yeah, I
something.
remember her. She was kind of a prodigy. She was getting a lot of press. Like she
Yeah,
sang at the opening for the Olympics or something. Like yeah, she
yes,
was huge. When she was 12 or something. She was
exactly.
Scottish or Irish or Welsh
Yeah,
or.
something like that. And she was making all these grown people cry and singing like these sort of light classical pieces. And I thought, oh, I want to be a classical singer. I want people to cry, and I want to do that, and I want to sing with an orchestra. And so I started taking classical voice lessons, and was still very much a nerd into school, like very academic minded. And I think when I graduated high school, I went to a magnet school where I studied French. I did like a French baccalaureate program in Miami. And when I graduated high school, I decided that I wanted to go live in France for maybe a year sabbatical. Mostly that's because the college application process here was freaking me out, and I felt that I needed a moment to just breathe after high school, and not do all these crazy applications that everyone was doing. So I went to this small town in the southeast of France called Aix-en-Provence, and there I studied French law and political science, and auditioned for the classical voice program and the jazz voice program. And the jazz voice, I mean, or the jazz program, the only reason I went is because I was with my mom, and she was like, well, you do like that one Sarah Vaughan song that you always sing, like you should just try it. And so I sang the one Sarah Vaughan song that I always sang, which was probably one of two, Misty or Lullaby of Birdland. Had no idea about anything. I mean, no idea. And the teacher was really encouraging in his quiet, awkward way, which was by saying nothing, but sort of seeing me in the street. It's a small town. Seeing me in the street a couple of days later, and telling me, "You better go to the audition." And I was like, "Okay." But I was really still so focused on classical voice. But I just remember in the jazz program, there were other musicians to play with, which was not the case with the classical voice program. I think a lot of classical voice programs, you just end up singing in a class with your teacher and an accompanist, maybe, but this was like a band, and everybody was learning together, and it was really, really exciting. And those first moments of trying to improvise and failing miserably, and trying to come up with an idea for how we were going to play a song and coming up with it together, it just felt so, so exciting. And I think also it was a connection to home for me, because I got to sing all these songs in English in France, even though I am French partly, but I was definitely homesick that first year. And I think that kind of gave me a weird connection to speaking English, which I guess in retrospect, maybe I missed a little. So my teacher really quickly found out that I had studied some classical piano, so forced me to play piano in my class, and eventually to stop singing and just focus on like piano trio stuff, which was terribly hard for me, but I think really, really great to work out. And he really he taught me how to teach myself, because he had no method and no plan. We would come to his class, and his ensemble class, for instance, and he'd just ask us what we wanted to do and what we had checked out. And if we hadn't checked anything out, we would just sort of sit in silence until someone made a move. For sometimes 20 minutes, he wouldn't move. And every week he would give me a stack of maybe 20 CDs of singers and musicians, instrumentalists that I had never heard of. People like Abby Lincoln, Bessie Smith, Babs Gonzalez, Lil Hardin Armstrong, Clarence Prophet, who became one of my favorite pianists and still is one of my favorite pianists. I love him. Valeda Snow, who was an incredible trumpet player and singer and band leader that has largely been forgotten. Just all sorts of stuff that was sort of deep cuts, and I just remember the passion with which I consumed all these things in those first years. It was so exciting. Um, I feel like I've gone on and on.
No, that's a lot of great stuff, and you brought up a lot of things that we want to definitely talk about. I think what's interesting to me, so we're not a conservatory at Princeton, so I can't think of what we do. We're a jazz program within a research institution, so we're looking at this music from multiple perspectives. I mean, I would love it if everyone could play giant steps in all keys, but I'm really okay with having larger conversations about what this music means and what it communicates and how it resonates in the world. And um, so I think one of the first things you said that I think is very interesting, you talk about all that music that you heard growing up. And what's fascinating to me is that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you were hearing all of it was being presented to you on a level playing field. Like there wasn't
Yes.
a sense of like, well, this is exotic and this is not exotic and this is Western and this is non-Western. And I think that's pretty remarkable. I mean, those are some things that I mean, in 2020, we're still trying to figure out how to break down some of those walls so people are listening to music, with I mean, it goes beyond openness. It's, the minute you could think of something as exotic, it's marginalized actually.
Yes.
So I think that's pretty incredible that you got to hear all that stuff in the way that you got to hear it because it could really get in your bones.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was no explanation. The music was just being played at home, and it was also from different eras. So, but that was also not explained or talked about. It was just, it was very, I think a lot of younger people listen to music and consume like all kinds of media in that way probably because of the internet. But it's just like, it was just shuffle, like
Right.
just whatever. Um, and it was great. We also danced a lot to music, which I think is something that is a little bit lost. I feel just casually danced to things we listened to, and I should mention that with my mother's album collection, my dad's album collection, there was also my sister's cassette collection, which was great because there was Nine Inch Nails, there was Marilyn Manson, there was Pearl Jam, there was all kinds of like grunge, like weird alternative, and I would steal stuff from her room, and that was an exhilarating way to listen to music too. And of course, I was brought up with the Disney musical. I think that's just really strong. No matter how corny it might be or how much I want to disavow it, sometimes it's like that was a really strong cultural thing for me. Watching those movies over and over again as a 6, 7 year old, every weekend watching the same one. Um, so all of those different musical influences, and then the classical piano and the classical voice at the same time. It was. I want to kind of. I'm trying to recreate that in my home. I try to recreate that
Yeah,
environment.
that's really cool. Um, so in college, so you're in France and you're studying law, and but obviously music is burning inside of you, and fortunately people have encouraged you to investigate all the jazz that you'd been listening to. But as a musician, was there ever? I mean, I have to ask, but especially since most of our students are not music majors, was there any sort of conflict with leaving the law and the poli sci, or the things you were studying? Now, I'm sure you're engaged with them to some degree casually now, but leaving the academic side of that behind and pursuing music, was that
Yes,
strange
it
or?
wasn't so much leaving the law. I didn't love law. I loved history of law. That was my favorite thing. And in retrospect, I think I should have just studied history because that was really exciting to me. Um, but it was the academic. Like, I really loved just studying something and getting into it and writing an essay about it and having a structure and having expectations from teachers and taking exams, and music was just this sort of nebulous, like, well, do whatever you want. And it still is. It's still very like, there's no there's nothing for me to like. I think I really, part of me really idealized a sort of just like, I want to be in an institution and have a boss to answer to and have deadlines.
Yeah, that
Um,
can be helpful.
it just felt too free and weird. And like, I think I was also, I didn't have a routine. I didn't have any like good habits to like practicing. I was terrible when it came to practicing the piano, which is why even though I studied it for 15 years, I can't play. I mean, not 15 years worth, because I would practice maybe 20, 15 minutes before the class, the weekly class, and just like try to learn the stuff by ear and just sort of charm my way out of it and be really nice to the teacher. And sometimes that worked. and and so I think I sort of landed in a situation where I was like, I don't know how to practice, what to do, what do I work on. It's like a blank canvas, but it's just like, where do you start? And so I remember those first few years, it was just a lot of, close the blinds, turn on Seinfeld for 12 hours and just try to sleep off my life. That's, I think, what I was trying to do. And then quickly learn a tune if I had to play it in an ensemble, and just go that way. So it was kind of depressing. I think I was really depressed for like a good amount of time in those early 20s.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, what do you think was that moment that you recognized that there's something greater in purpose in terms of how you're going to use your art form?
I think that happened. I think I'm still trying to get to that full mindset, but I gradually got more and more comfortable. I gradually developed some better habits. I started to observe myself and see where my downfalls were and see what I needed to avoid doing. And I also just casually gave myself 3 years. And I said, I'll just try this for 3 years. If it's cool, then I'll continue. And if it's not, then I'll go back to school and study something and get a job. And I didn't even know what I would study. I was like, probably English or something in history but eventually, yeah, I think after I made that decision, it sort of lightened it, because I was like, it doesn't have to be the rest of my life. And very quickly I started playing with more and more people, and I won a competition that made me it was a great opportunity to meet a bunch of American musicians and start playing in the US. And so so I sort of said, okay, well, let's keep going and see how it goes. And yeah, that was, I guess, 11 years ago, probably.
So the teacher that you were talking about that gave you all the CDs, was that Jean Bonnel? Was that the
Yes.
saxophonist?
Yes.
So I think that's really interesting too, that your first mentor was not a singer, was a saxophonist. And because
and he was a terrible singer. He would sometimes sing to explain things, but it was I think there was something really great about the fact that when he would try to show me, it would be through this sort of weird voice that couldn't really sing. And then I would try to emulate that. I think for me, it was great, because I had his saxophone playing to go off of. I had his sort of half-ass singing to go off of. And then I had to make up my own way. If I had a teacher that early that was a vocalist or a singer, I sometimes worry that I would have just wanted to be her or him and sound exactly like them. I become a real copycat whenever something excites me. I still do it now. I mean, in drawings, in handwriting, I never had my own handwriting ever. My current handwriting is my sister's handwriting. I really have that tendency. So I'm glad that I didn't have to fight against that urge with a singing teacher, a vocalist as a teacher.
well, we were talking about that earlier, that there's this, I
Right.
think more and more in academia and music, academia and jazz, they're kind of preconceptions about how you study and what you're supposed to do.
And in
You
class
know, it's
music
go
itself,
ahead, Trinice.
that literally we were just talking about that, and I was saying to Radresh that, you know, and now it makes sense hearing you speak about your process and your exposure, that you didn't get sucked into the academic preconceived notions about what is right, what is the right way to use your instrument, where you come from a much more open, like, this is my instrument and it's going to come out, versus what is typically learned in traditional pedagogy is about, you know, having this seamless sound and having all of these, again, preconceived notions about what is an expressive voice, particularly in the classical aspect. So I think you totally, it completely explains your freedom, that is, I think, really important to get students to believe in that their voice, and I commend that, and I think that's very, very cool. One of the things that I had a question about is something that you said earlier, and you talked about virtuosic voices, getting back to that concept, and vocal gymnasts. What now, as you've been out as a performer and as you have been exposed to not only previous singers but other instrumentalists, how would you now define, what does it mean to be a virtuosic? What does that mean for you?
Well, I think um, I think it still means the same thing for me, because it's helpful for me to have it mean this particular thing, which is a voice that can do anything, an incredible range, a lot of flexibility, um, and also probably an incredible ear, because in order to have an incredible voice, you do have to have an incredible ear too. Um, a great tone, like all this stuff. But the reason that it's important for me to keep that definition there is that I love a non-virtuosic voice. I love all voices. I love a bad voice. I want it all. I want it all. I love a voice. I love somebody making terrible choices that are hilarious. I love it all. So um, I definitely had this period, I think, when I started really getting into singing jazz and really focusing in on American folk music. I started turning my back on virtuosity. And also you have to imagine, I was also taking classical voice lessons. I was still very much in that world and very much about, like, the voice needs to be homogenous. It needs to carry over a large orchestra and a big hall. There's so many things that you need to do. And I was in these jazz classes listening to Elizabeth Cotten and Billie Holiday and Big Bill Broonzy and all these examples of different ways a voice could be
All right.
and could be expressive. And I do keep coming back to this idea of, like, the more, I don't know what the best way to say this. I've read great writers and thinkers express this sentiment of, like, the more tools you have, the more virtuosity you have, the harder it is to actually be expressive. It's not impossible, but now you're gonna have to work harder in a strange way, and it can be distracting. So, and I was just looking at this Bill Traylor book. Bill Traylor is an incredible. Hold on. He's an incredible artist. He was a slave and self-taught, and this is the kind of stuff that he did. And okay, so Kerry James Marshall. Do you all know who Kerry James Marshall is?
No,
So
I'm not.
he's also an artist. I'm sorry for taking this sidestep for what I'm trying to say, but so this is Kerry James Marshall um, work. This is also a Kerry James Marshall work. Okay. I don't know if you can see anything.
Yeah, no, we can see it.
So I'll just stand a little bit so you can see it. So anyhow, Kerry James Marshall is great. He's one of my favorite artists. And so is Bill Traylor. They're very different. But I remember getting this Bill Traylor book and reading through the foreword is by Kerry James Marshall, which was really exciting to me. And he talks about this idea. I wish I could find it, but the increase of artistic resources also increases the risk of failure. And that's something that I've been grappling with since I started. And it's also been for me sometimes a cop out for like actually checking stuff out thoroughly and actually trying to develop technique in certain areas because of this feeling that I have about it. But I feel like I'm now getting to a place where I realize that I have a responsibility to increase my artistic resources and then have to work twice as hard to make them work, you know? That's sort of where I'm at with that. Sorry.
No, that totally makes sense. And I'm sure all of the Princeton students are like, yes. Speaking of which, please, you guys use the raise hand function. We are welcoming questions. The raise hand function can be found in the participants section, and we'll just unmute you. Go ahead and unmute yourself because we do want this to be a collaborative and very casual, intimate setting. So just letting you all know that that's how we're going to know that you have a question. All right. Go ahead.
Hi, Darcy.
You're about to say something? Okay, you're on mute, Rudrish.
My Zoom chops are off today. It's a weekend. When was this period where you were transcribing a lot of piano, like James P. Johnson, and was that during college?
Yeah, that was in the beginning of like, it must have been 18, 19. I think the first thing that I ever transcribed was one of my favorite pianists that's often not remembered for his piano playing, but Duke Ellington, this album called Piano in the Foreground. And I was transcribing him. I transcribed a little bit of Nat King Cole, another one of my favorites, James P. Johnson. And of course, I've forgotten all that stuff. I didn't know how to transcribe or how to use it to my benefit. So I would just memorize and transcribe and be excited that I could play little bits and pieces of things and then call it a day and not actually do any of the work necessary after that. To internalize the ideas, to put things in different contexts back into their original, like I just think I wanted to be able to play the sections, the passages that I liked, which is funny because now I often talk to Sullivan Fortner, who is the piano player that you all saw on that video with me doing Fog. We often talk about transcription. He is super against transcription, which I think is really interesting. He's sort of a partisan of like kind of half transcribing, like being really like approximating things, and that the approximation is where you are, and also putting things upside down and paying attention to subtleties. I think we talk a lot about, like, you know, the idea for transcription often is first let's get the notes, and he talks a lot about like paying attention to like really subtle rhythmic choices or inflections, and I think it's sort of changed my mind about how, and I realize now I'll say this, I realize now that the singers that I was listening to that were really, really affecting me, I was listening to some songs over and over again for like 3 months, just every day, the same song. But I didn't think of it as a transcription. I would just listen to it over and over again for pleasure, and really pay attention to like their accents. Like, um, and I think that that is a way of transcribing without knowing that you're actually transcribing. But I think that that was more more influential on me than the times that I've decided to transcribe a Ella Fitzgerald solo and like do it exactly as is. That was less. That was fun. It's fun, but it has less of an impact, I think, for me.
Right, you're soaking it in more by listening to it regularly like that, and maybe in a more casual way. I'm always a big fan of what we take in subconsciously. I mean, you're doing something while you're cooking, but it's getting in there and making a difference somehow. So I think that's really cool.
I see Jimmy has a question. Can we take a question now?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah. Sorry to butt in, but I had a question about the idea of like a virtuosic voice and kind of getting lost in having more and more possibilities. I was wondering how your approach is different when you look at covers or standards versus like original music, because I feel like to some extent when I write lyrics, the lyrics become what takes over like what I'm thinking about, and I don't think as much about the specific interpretation or how I'm singing every word. And I was wondering if you can relate to that at all.
I totally can relate to that. I find that singing someone else's song, I don't even think it's, I think it's just natural. Singing someone else's song gives you that extra bit of distance where you can kind of play around with it in a different way. For the originals, if it's my own originals, I have to try to create that distance, which is not there. But and then depending, I mean, I'm always trying to make sure that the lyrics stand out first and last and always. But I definitely see that I play around with a cover or a standard more than I do with my own originals. And I feel like that's normal. And I feel like that's also a reason why I'm sick and tired of playing my own originals. I want somebody else. I would love to just hear somebody else sing them and not sing them at all. And I've been playing with, singing other singers' originals, because I feel like a thing that's happened now with a lot of musicians is that everybody just plays their own material, or they play like super old material, or they play like a cover from somebody that they don't know. But there isn't that sort of, what word am I looking for? Cross something, whatever. There isn't the community of just like, let's all play each other's songs and grow from that, and have the songs develop their own life separate from us. And so I've been thinking about that more and more, and just like sick and tired of writing for me and of singing my own songs. I'd like to hear them and it's been rare. People don't usually sing my songs, but every time it's been really thrilling to see what people do with it. And I think they can only do that if they have that distance. If they didn't write it.
Mr. Lee, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. There's another question. Let me open you.
Cecile, nice meeting you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So I'm allowed to ask questions since I'm not only non-student or faculty on this Zoom.
We'll let you off this time, Anthony.
So Cecile, you won the Monk Award in 2010, as I remember, right? So obviously music is not a competitive sport. So my question is, what are your views on jazz competition as a whole? And what do you think that there's a particular format that you think works better than the other ones?
It's hard. I think jazz competitions are stressful and fun. They're exciting. I think they're exciting if you're in the audience because you can kind of pick who you want to win based off your own like personal preferences. I've been on a jury once for a vocal competition. And that was really hard because how do you compare? And how do you decide that one person is more deserving of the award than another? So I don't know. I mean, I think the format that I've been interested a little bit in the format that the American Pianist Association has for their competition. They have a jazz piano competition called the Cole Porter. And they just, I think they do a bunch of different stuff. Like they look at how the pianists interact with students. They look at how they play with a trio, how they play with a big band, how they play with a singer, how they play solo. They go to different gigs. Like it's a whole, it's like a year, or maybe 2 years. I don't know. We should ask them, but it's over a longer span of time. When you have a competition that's like the Monk competition, or that's like a lot of these competitions, you have your audition tape, that's one thing, but then you have like 3 days. And if those 3 days are good days for you, then, like you could have a bad day. I don't know. So that's not to say, I mean, I'm really glad with everything that I've had, but I remember winning it and maybe a week later having a nightmare like about me being at the competition and messing it up and then losing it, like because it's just one moment, so I don't know how I made it through that thing.
Yeah, I'm asking this question because I'm based in Australia. I'm thinking very seriously of establishing a improvised jazz award. And one idea I have is actually for the participants to write down a proposal as to what they're going to use with the monetary awards. Yeah, so that I think maybe that's an idea that we can kind of use as well, right? So form of judgment, right? Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting. that adds a whole new layer to it.
Well, it's like a grant proposal and a competition at the same time. Very interesting. You've combined the two evils of funding your career. Yeah, right, exactly. No, but I'm actually glad Anthony asked that question. I mean, beyond like, the criteria. I mean, I think with the younger generations. I know, you're considerably younger than me, but even like these folks, students here, competitions have become like this more important than ever as a way of getting discovered or something, whereas, I feel like when, I finished high school in the late 80s, finished my bachelor's in the early 90s, like it still seemed like that, oh yeah, that guy won that competition, but it wasn't going to put you so far ahead. Like there were still all these other avenues to, to be recognized and to develop your voice. And, I see all these competitions and I, encourage my students to do them because I want their career to get bolstered, for them to get noticed. I mean, how do you feel about that? About this idea that maybe without that, there are not enough ways to get noticed outside of the competitions now, except for like YouTube and Instagram.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to say. And I also feel like sometimes, the competition, getting noticed from the competition is like one moment, right? So if you do get noticed, you win it, or maybe you place, you get noticed, but you get noticed for like, what, 1 week? What's the news cycle? I don't know. You get noticed for whatever that moment is, and then it's over, I think. That was my experience. It was really exciting. Oh my God. And you finish it and I was like, oh my God, like I'm famous now. This is crazy. Like my life's going to be crazy. There's going to be paparazzi. Like this is insane. And then and people very American, like, let's play together. You're gonna sing on my record. Like, all this stuff was like being said to me, right? And then I went home to France and nothing, like nothing happened. No paparazzi, not famous, nobody cared. No, none of the people who were like, oh, you sound great, let's play together. Nobody called. And I went back to my music school, back to my piano trio with my teacher yelling at me for not knowing the changes to a standard. And it was like that for a while. So, I don't know how much that initial bang from the competition can really, like, it can only carry you so far, I guess. Unless you have like an album lined up right after and like you're just like ready to go. But if like me, you're not ready to go, then I feel like life kind of settles in. Now labels will then and press people will then be happy to be like, oh, she won the monk competition, But I don't know how far it takes you. I at least I feel like I learned pretty quickly to not count on that at all, as like as a boost, because I think that's a dangerous thing to count on. I hope that doesn't sound stupid or annoying.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, I'm happy that I'm happy about it, and I think people should try, absolutely. But you can't just like coast on that for the rest of your life, or you could, but maybe you could and you should. Maybe you could.
I mean, my concern is that the number of musicians that are out there, mainly because of music schools cranking out, proficient jazz musicians, not necessarily people that are going to change the world, but there are lots of like really good, more than proficient musicians. Yeah. So my concern with a lot of my students is like, I don't quite know what advice to give you to help you get noticed, other than to just, keep doing the hard work and keep trying to develop your sound and your voice. But that doesn't have the immediate gratification that we want from things in 2020. So that's, that's a little bit difficult too. But I definitely appreciate what you're saying. I mean, I think that's good for the students to hear that.
We're going to go to another question. The Jeff Crew.
Yeah, this is from the Boston House.
Boston House at Penn.
I want to be over there. That seems fun.
Hi. Thanks so much for talking to us. This is so cool.
Thank you for listening.
I had a question. My name's Maya.
Hi, Maya.
Hey, so basically, I've been reading a little bit about like some early blues women and like their roles, not just as artists or musicians, but also as like agents of social change. And listening to your music, I kind of hear this continuation of this like radical spirit. And I just wanted to know like if you had any thoughts about your relationship to being an artist versus being a social activist, or if you feel those two roles, are inseparable, or maybe things that have some overlapping aspects. And then also if maybe like, that relationship has changed throughout your life.
It's hard for me to say. I mean, I read recently a book about feminism, Black feminism, with these blues singers. It's an Angela Davis book. You might be reading it. Is that the one? Yeah. It's so good. I highly recommend it to everyone. It's super, super interesting. And sheds light on a certain kind of feminism that is often overlooked in that time, and that seems weird when you look at the history, I guess, of this music and how it dips in and out of really explicit activism and explicit like political content. I feel like it dips in and out of that. The history of American music does. I'm not in a great position to answer this, I think, but I can say that the music that I choose, like the songs that I choose to sing, the music that I write, I try to have it be reflective of who I am and what I think and what makes me excited or what infuriates me. And so that inevitably at some point reaches identity and being Black and being a woman and being a feminist and being infuriated by a lot of things. So so that I think seeps out, but I don't set out to make my music overtly political. I don't think. I say this and I think back on some of the choices that I've made in terms of the songs that I've chosen to sing and some of the stuff I say before I sing those songs. Maybe I don't want to say that it's political and have it be political without saying it. um, but I would say I've always been attracted to like radical thinkers, like political activists, and so it's there. It's got to be there. I'm not running away from it, but I maybe not. I think I'm more able to express express these things through my musical choices than through my words, as you can see right now.
No, that's great. Anson?
Cecile, I'm gonna actually ask you to tell a story that I've heard you tell about your song selection and about Wives and Lovers.
Yeah.
And about how you found that song, because I mean, you said that
You're right.
it's not a conscious choice, but
You're right,
in this
it's
case,
conscious.
yeah,
You're right. My bad. So I did, and now I'm gonna just erase. I'm gonna etch a sketch, erase everything I've said. The reason I sang Wives and Lovers, which is this Burt Bacharach song about how women need to be just fully ready, fully physically ready for their husband when he comes home at night. I was looking up feminist, I Googled feminist standards and was led to a page of sexist like there were no web pages with feminist standards on them. It was sexist, misogynist standards. And then I started getting into it, and there was a lot of really funky stuff like what is that song? He slapped me and it felt like a kiss, or he kicked me and it felt like a kiss. What is the song?
He hit me.
He hit me. He hit me and it felt like a kiss, which is written by Carole King. So anyway, Wives and Lovers was on that list. I heard it by none other than the glorious Frank Sinatra in all of its just that song, and by Sinatra is in all of its glory. You could just really hear the whole vibe of that song. And I did immediately want to sing it. So I don't know what so I don't know my words. I know my heart.
But your interpretation of that song is, I mean, it's one of the standouts of, I feel like, your live set always, because the interpretation is so arch, and like the spin that you put on it as you are singing it is crystal clear to everyone. So like, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your like adversarial approach to some of the songs that you sing, where like you are, that, and there, I can think of a few from your repertoire where your interpretation of it is commentary, essentially.
Yes. it's commentary that I can't help uh, but make. It's very hard for me to keep it subtle. I definitely am folding in all of my feelings about what it means to get physically ready for a man. And it's that song, Wives and Lovers in particular, is fun to sing because over the years I've realized that there's also something deeply scary about it. And so sometimes I sing it actually fully horrified. I don't think you've been there, Darcy, when I've done that. Usually it's light and fun, but sometimes I sing it completely in a horrified state. And that's
Like a Handmaid's Tale sort of horrified
yeah,
state?
exactly. But yeah, I think that was the thing about that song that was so fun. There's another song that I like to sing called Black, Brown, and White, which is a song that Big Bill Brunsey used to sing, incredible blues guitarist and singer. And the lyric is, if you're white, you're all right. If you're brown, stick around. If you're black, get back, get back, get back. And the song itself is like, the way we play it is just like a fun, friendly blues vibe. And I've done it in France a few times and in Japan a few times. And I think some of the audiences didn't understand the English because they were just dancing around gloriously, like they were having the most fun of all the songs in the set. So that's something that I have to deal with too, is like when picking these kinds of songs and trying to do this like sort of commentary on them, like make sure that people understand what the lyrics are, because otherwise they're just gonna dance around. That's nice. I like people to dance around too, though.
Anson.
Yep. Anson, go ahead.
I have a question sort of about how you write. When you set out to kind of create a project, however big it is, do you sit down with the intention of like, do you have a final message and kind of a plan of how to get there and then kind of fill in the narrative, or do you like drop yourself in a place and then let the message kind of come out?
Most of the time it's a drop in a place, kind of, sometimes even just super intuitive. There's one word that fits on these chord changes, and then build the song slowly around that word, and try to make it make sense. Sometimes I'll write a poem type thing or a set of lyrics with no music. So that's a very intentional thing in terms of the meaning of the words. But the most fun I've had writing, and I think the most effective thing, has been to have a plan and have a structure. And I did that with this this piece called Ogress, which Darcy is a part of in many ways. And that was like a plan. It was like a paragraph. I wrote the story, and then I loved the feeling of just having to fill in the pieces and just saying like, okay, we need this kind of song at this moment. Let's put the love song or whatever it is. Let's put the song where so and so dies or whatever. I like that better, and I think I'm struggling now because I'm trying to write songs, but it's harder for me to not have that larger narrative plan. So I think I'm gonna have to come up with another story now.
There are a few more people in line to ask questions, but just real quick, just on that note, were you always writing original music?
No.
Oh, so was there a catalyst for that, or did something kick that off, or did you have to do it for an assignment?
I did not have to do it for an assignment. This is where maybe my teacher in France was different. Another way he was different. He never encouraged us to write our own songs. And I started being, I think I was very deliberate in not wanting to write music because I felt like that's what everybody does. And I just had this whole speech about like, what happened to just somebody who could just interpret? Like, does everybody have to be writing songs? I was just so on my high horse about that, and just like refusing, and not even checking in with myself to see if I even wanted to. I was just like, I'm gonna just interpret. There's many examples of great interpreters, and I'm gonna just try to do my best to sing songs that are already written. I have nothing to say. And then I think I heard an Abby Lincoln song that she wrote, and the simplicity of the song, or the apparent simplicity of it, tricked me into thinking like that I could try my hand at it. And it was really hard. but it was exciting. I thought, oh, I might have something that I want to express or try, and I can always decide later to never do it again. So I would say Abby Lincoln tricked me.
You're on mute.
Like that. That's cool. And what you say about it, I understand the sentiment about original music, because I think everyone feels obligated to, finish college and put out an album of original music.
Yeah.
And
it's like similar to scatting for singers. It's like if you don't do it, you're not. So if you don't write original music, like you're not like who are you even? What are you even doing? If you just put out an album of standards, what's happening?
Right.
Why? and you're, I think, probably quickly just judged as like, okay, that person's just doing trad jazz, tribute album, whatever, And I think that there's not enough room for just interpreting great songs. And it doesn't have to be. I remember I used to do this tribute music festival in the north of England, in a place called Whitley Bay. And every set was a tribute, but not a tribute like you've done, Rudresh, where you play your version, but a tribute where you're playing the original, it's like a tribute band. Is that not a term?
Oh yeah.
Not if it's a term. Yeah.
Right.
So it would be like a Billie Holiday set or a Louis Armstrong set, and we would just play as is. And it was a great school, but it was just it felt to me in the beginning like either you're doing that or you're doing all original music, free, just totally off the spectrum, wild stuff. And I wanted to find somewhere in between that. I wanted to live somewhere between those two poles.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it sounds like you've allowed yourself time to develop a voice as a composer as well. So, I mean, I think that's an important thing too. I always tell people you can't spell composer without poser. So
I like that.
Yeah, so we're gonna play something else. The first time I think I heard you live was at one of the NEA Jazz Masters ceremonies.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think you sang Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child, but you sang it solo. I think you sang it a cappella.
I think so, yeah.
And I was trying to find a bootleg of that, but I couldn't. But there's an a cappella piece on that NPR Tiny Desk set. So I just want to play that, and then we can talk about a few more things. So this is Omi Wise, short for Naomi Wise, right?
Yes.
And I didn't even know this is a genre called the murder ballad, which
Yes.
maybe you could tell us more about
Yes.
that in a second here. But let's listen to this. Let me see. This is a 1355, I believe. Let me share the screen again. Hold on. Skip that.
This last one is a very old song. Me wise. Let me see. I'll tell you
Uh-oh. What happened?
a story of little old me wise. How she became deluded by John Lewis's lies. He told her to meet him down by Adams Spring. Some money he would bring and some other fun thing. Then foolish like she met him at Adams's Spring. No money he brought her, nor other fun thing. No money to flatter the case. We'll go and get married, there'll be no disgrace. John Lewis, please tell me your mind. Do you intend to marry me or leave me behind? Little old me, I tell you my mind. My mind is to drown you and leave you behind. Please pity our baby and spare me my life. I'll go home a beggar and won't be your wife. He hugged her, he kissed her, he turned her around. He threw her in deep water where he knew she would
Drown.
Thanks, Cecile.
drown.
He jumped.
He jumped on his pony and away he did ride. The screams of little Omi went down by his side. It was one windy morning, the rain was pouring down. The people searched for Omi, but she could not be found. Two boys went a-fishing one fine summer day. They saw little Omi go floating away. They threw their net around her and pulled her to the shore. The body of Omi was searched for no more. They sent for John Lewis. John Lewis came by. When confronted with her body, he broke down and cried, "You can hang me, you can shoot me, for I am the man. I drowned little Omi at yonder old mill dam. My name is John Lewis, my name I'll ne'er deny. I drowned little Omi, I'll never reach the sky."
Yeah, so that's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
So So I have a couple of questions about that. I mean, first of all, that's ridiculously amazing on many levels, both musically and
Oh, thank
technically,
you.
and it's just kind of scary good. Um, where would you put that in a set?
I will usually put it at the end, like as an encore, but every now and again, I will put it right in the middle.
I think that's really interesting. I mean it's really beautiful and I think just a cappella on any instrument is takes a lot of guts. You know, I think it requires a lot of bravery. It's putting yourself out there. It's kind of taking risks, which I feel like is something you do in all of your work. The way you lead a band, the repertoire you choose. But maybe we can talk about that in a sec. We have a couple of other questions here. Let's go to Evan. Trinice, can you unmute Evan? Or can you? Oh, you can unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, I'm good. So I guess my question's become decreasingly relevant ever since Anson's question, but I raised my hand, so I might as well ask it. I'm glad that you spoke about Ogress a little bit because I was wondering about that. And so I remember at the end of last school year, Darcy showed Alex and I like sort of some of like the musical transformation of that and some of the arranging choices that you made. But I was wondering about like the conceptual transformation of it because when I heard about this, I was like kind of struck. Like, how do you just write like a cantata that's like simultaneously an homage to multiple people in history and incorporates like all of these kind of like disparate themes? Like I remember in the your description of it had like ecology, but also feminism and aspects of her identity. So I was wondering, with like sort of even as you made like your original like song sketches, how that evolved, because it seems like kind of a crazy undertaking to me.
Um, uh, well, I'll say this. I think the first idea that I had was I want to work with Darcy. And then I thought I should probably write some songs for that. And so I started sending Darcy these random songs, which I've since thrown away. I don't even remember. And I wrote a song called Boneyard Dance, which was just sort of an idea. And Darcy, did you arrange that before or after we started thinking about Ogress?
Yeah, so that's the first song of the, like, you sent me a batch of a few songs, and it's the one that kind of caught my ear. So that's the first one that I did kind of a mock-up arrangement of. Because originally, this was before Ogress was even a glimmer in your mind, and you're like, I'm going to have an album that's going to be all original songs, and I want there to be um, uh, a larger ensemble on it, like maybe a string section, maybe some. So I put strings and like mallet percussion, like marimba and accordion on it, and did like just like a little mock-up of like, well, here's like what I might be able to do with it. Like, here's like one direction. You let me know if you think this is worthwhile pursuing, and if so, we'll line up the players for the record.
Yes. So I have something that I'll show you guys because I think this is funny to think about how sometimes the stuff that surrounds you in your house has an impact. So this is above. Can you see it? This is above my piano. This is a painting by a Haitian painter named Gérard Fortuné. Back in the days when I was really into Pinterest, I was looking at all these Haitian folk paintings, and I saw this on Pinterest, and I probably posted it on Facebook. and my mom tracked it down. She tracked down the gallerist who had it, and she got it for me for my birthday, for like my 25th birthday. And that's still the most incredible birthday gift I've ever received. And it's beautiful. I mean, the sides of it are beautiful, and I love this so much. So this is above the piano, right? And it was in my last apartment where I started probably having the idea for Ogress. And as you can see, I mean, this looks like a big woman in the woods a little bit, right? And that's sort of what Ogress is about. But I didn't even, it probably was like a year after I wrote it that I looked up and I was like, oh, this has been the inspiration for it all along. I think I just had come to a point where I had all of these different ideas. I remember looking at a journal from like 2013, so a while ago, where I was like, I want to write a one-woman show. I want to write like, or not a one-woman show, but like something where I sing all the characters, and I guess that is a one-woman show. And you know, that's just a longer story. So I had these things that I wanted to do. It's sort of like these imaginary projects. I had like this book which had like imaginary projects on the cover, and just like all this stuff that I would never do, but that I kind of was dreaming of. And this kept coming back, this idea of like a longer story. And I remember wanting to write something about hunger, about like a big woman. And so it was just in my head for a while, and then I think I was on tour. I must have been, I think, and it sort of just the whole idea for the story came to me in one swoop. And we didn't do everything in that initial idea, that initial paragraph, but I remember sending it to Darcy and being a little nervous because I didn't know I didn't know if it was completely stupid, and it actually might still be completely stupid, but I was like, I'll just send him this, and that way it'll solidify that I have to do it. So Darcy, I don't know if you remember that I sent you an email basically like, so change of plans. We're not doing just a random song cycle. We're not doing just random songs. This is the storyline. And it was like very detailed of like what happened to the characters. And Darcy was very forgiving of it and kind.
I was incredibly excited about it. I remember that very well. It was like, oh, okay, well, here we go. This is this is a left turn, but I'm there for it.
It's like we have a couple of questions. Jimmy, you have your hand up. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, I was wondering about singing in English and French, because I'm a singer and mediocre French speaker right now. And I just noticed how the two languages, like, you end up using, like, the sound resonates in a really different way, and you're using completely different parts of, like, your mouth to produce sound. So I was wondering if there's any big differences you notice from the perspective of like sound production, and then also how a different language changes the story of a song that you're delivering, and how it changes, like the way you think.
I personally sound really different speaking English and speaking French. So that itself is an indicator that it will sound different, because I think I try to start from the spoken voice when I sing. Like that's my baseline, and then everything else is just we add on top of that. But I try to keep it as natural and close to the spoken voice as possible, or just have that as a
say that
as a reference.
Just for me. Say it one more time, just for
I
Every
try to
lesson.
have my spoken voice, the voice that I used to speak, as a reference, as a jumping off point. And then everything else is just extras, but we're talking, you know. So when I speak French, if you were to hear me speak French, like, it's just a different voice. And so for a very long time, I didn't even know how I would do it, if I should do it. It felt like it was just crazy. So for years, I was living in France and never singing in French, never. And I think it's only probably when I moved to the US that I started going back to France and singing in French when I was there, and getting really excited about finding that connection again with the audience and being able to choose songs based on like interesting lyrics, or like, there is an incredible repertoire. If you're getting into French, or I don't know really what your experience with French is, but if you were to just pick some Léo Ferré songs or some Barbara songs and just listen to them and try to maybe learn them and check out the lyrics and really get into it, it's such a fun way to experience that language, because there are some really incredible lyrics, just interesting, poetic, funny, and with a totally different sense of humor, totally different cultural context, right? So I think, I guess I started just to try it here and there. I wrote, I set a poem by a Haitian poet named Ida Faubert. I set that to music, and so that was sort of an initial try. I sang a couple Eric Satie songs. I started adding more and more, and now when I go to France, I think there's about 5 or 6 songs that are in French. I'm sort of going through the same experience with repertoire in French that I went through with American repertoire, which is just like this attraction to left turns in a song, attraction to like just degradation. And I mean, one of my favorite songs to sing in French is called J'ai le cafard, which is, the title would be I Have the Cockroach, which means just like, it's kind of like I have a cockroach in my soul. I'm depressed. And the first line of the song is, no, I'm not drunk, which to me is the best first line. Like, if you have to say that, then I don't know. So there's a lot of really fun stuff to sing. And I started just owning it a little bit more, owning that my voice was a little different, that some people would not like it, because we were talking about exoticism earlier. When I go to France, I am a Black singer, last name McLorin. People really like that part of my name, you know? And sometimes they actually even take the E off the end of my name. Cecile is a French name, right? But sometimes they take that E off because they want me to be fully American in a way. They want that experience. And when I throw in these like deep cut Parisian songs from the 30s that nobody remembers, that like not even their grandma remembers, that it's no longer what they signed up for. Now people know what to expect, but when I started it, I would get comments after the concerts like, why didn't you just sing in English? We just wanted standards, or you're less adventurous in French, or I don't know, just a bunch of stuff. We were disappointed in the repertoire. I'm like, okay, well, but I kept adding more French songs.
Thanks, that's really interesting.
Alex.
Hi, thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. It's been really great to hear you speak. I'm just curious about your approach to band leading, and especially as it kind of pertains to the recordings you did with like Aaron Deal Trio, and then your work now that you're doing with Salvant. I'm a great band leader in terms of, I think, being nice to the band. But I'm a terrible band leader in all other forms. I'm not a good leader. I'm too soft.
I don't know how to express what I'm hearing. I'm very vague. It's probably extremely frustrating. I'm not particularly organized when we're rehearsing. I really need a translator. I really have come to realize, and I need to work on it. Separately, I need to work on being able to speak as a leader without having a translator. I don't know what that is. I'm very apologetic about any kind of decision making. Is that a woman thing? Is that a personality thing? Who knows where it begins and ends? But I am working on that aspect of things. I have found that it's a lot easier for me to have a person that I can just dump everything on, dump all of my issues on, and tell them like, okay, I'm thinking about this, this, and this, and they are able to translate it a lot better to the band. And also another thing is that I sell myself short a lot, so maybe I am better than than that, but I don't know.
Well, no, I think one of the things, the common denominator in a lot of your answers have been, I'm genuinely me. And I tell stories, and I surround myself with people that will help me tell these stories, and that's to be a reoccurring theme that's coming through all of your answers in so many aspects. So, no, you're already there. Stop playing.
Thank you. I think also just one last thing that I'll say, the instrument that I've had the most contact with all my life, as we've said, is the piano. So I have more ability to translate things on the piano and with a piano player than any other. I'm slowly trying to develop other ways of working, more versatile ways. But even with Ogress, I mean, when I was working with Darcy, the best way for me to express what those songs were and how I felt it was by just recording myself singing and playing it, and then being like, okay, relay. I'm very relay race. Like I did a part, now you go, and let's meet at the end of it. Is that accurate? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that actually that makes sense. One of the questions that I was wondering as we were listening to your songs, what are you thinking about when you're listening to yourself, past recordings?
I used to absolutely hate it and just feel a wave of just frustration, be annoyed. It used to be really horrible. Now, I don't know if this is better, but now I'm like, oh, like my reaction is like, she's trying. It's okay. Like at least she's her heart is in it. Like it's almost like I'm a big sister. Like okay. So being condescending towards the recording is maybe not great, but it's still better than the deep, I think, hatred and like discomfort. Like I probably last year, a couple years ago, if we were playing something, I would probably want to just take the headphones off and not acknowledge. And I will say that I actively avoid hearing myself. I know other musicians who use it and use it to their benefit and actually get better from listening to themselves and making note of certain things. I'm trying to do that, but it's a very uncomfortable experience for sure.
Yeah, it is so funny because I ask that to people a lot because, there's some people that just seem to just really enjoy hearing themselves. There's some people that's like, I have way better music now. Actually, I haven't produced the music that is the best music yet. So don't even play that. So I always find it very interesting
Well, that's interesting because it's not, I don't even come from a place of like, I have better music now. I'm just like, like even the stuff now, I'm like, mm-mm. But I'm trying to just do a little like shoulder, just do this to myself a little bit more. Like it's okay.
But it's kind of like what we were talking about with competitions, right? It's just kind of a moment.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
So I guess, unfortunately, recordings stick around forever. But I think if we can view it as being ephemeral, maybe we're, yeah, we can live with it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna.
I do. I'm sorry, but I just want to say about that. I do love seeing Leontine Price listen to herself sing. If you go on YouTube and you see like interviews of her listening to herself, she's loving it, and it's great. She's just like, yes, I have a beautiful voice. Like, yes, and I love that. I think that's so good. It's so great.
Go ahead.
So you were talking about. I definitely appreciate what you're talking about as far as like needing a translator, trying to express what you want from the rhythm section or from a band. What are some other things that you are looking for as a band leader in your rhythm section, in your side people? Maybe not even musical qualities, but certain attitudes even, or certain kinds of energy, or
I'm looking for a good amount of openness and versatility and like cultural openness. Somebody that's gonna, like, I did a gig at the Vanguard where we played songs by Kurt Weill, but also like Shania Twain and Sting, and we played with James Chirillo, who's a banjo player, who's a banjo and guitarist, and initially was like, well, what are you here like? You want to do this Erykah Badu song, but like I'm playing the banjo. Like, what are you hearing on this? And I was like, just let's play. Like, so I'm looking for, and it ended up being like a really, really fun experience. We actually just went in the studio and recorded a couple weeks ago, but he was nervous about playing a certain kind of repertoire on the instrument, and so when he actually did and just played whatever he felt was right, it felt really good. And I think really what I'm looking for is people who are willing to just go there and try it. And I'm looking for a lot of sensitivity. I'm looking for people who have some kind of an appreciation for singing and a respect for singing, because I think a lot of instrumentalists, like, they like singing, but they don't really respect it as for what it is in a lot of cases, or they're not fans of singing. Like, it's not something that they think about a lot. And I do find that I have a lot of affinity with like Sullivan Fortner, because on top of how incredible he is and how versatile he is and how sensitive and how weird and surprising he is, he's also like just a fan of singing and loves singers and is a singer himself and knows lyrics and helps me with lyrics when I forget them. I look for also, I just mentioned it, but I'll reiterate it. I look for somebody that can surprise me, for a great deal of flexibility. Obviously, this is beyond like somebody who's technically proficient. Like, there's a certain amount of just like being able to play the instrument, but we're not talking about that, right? Somebody who feels good. I mean, then there's also the idea of like, sometimes you can have separately musicians that are incredible, but then how do they play together? So that adds a whole new layer of like who you pick, because because you want it to feel good as an ensemble. I also, well, not anymore, I'm not on tour, but there is a consideration for the person's personality. Just because when you're on tour with somebody for that long, if it's a nightmare, like that really weighs on you. And it really just, some people love working in sort of conflictual, is that a word? Environments. I do not like that at all. It drains me. So there needs to be some kind of comfort level on that end. And I also, I do have to say that once I have a good connection with somebody, I like to go back to them. So there is like something that I look like, another element would be familiarity, like with the person, with their playing. I get so nervous anytime I'm in a new context, and it's like, it's paralyzing. The first time I played Ogress with the band and Darcy, I was paralyzed. Now I feel like, oh, okay, like it's family, like we're, you know, it's, and now I can't imagine building a whole new band for something else. Every time it's excruciating. So I do love a certain kind of familiarity. I do have a tendency, like if I've played with you before in a context, I'll more readily call someone back that I know and that I've played with and that's familiar than get someone new, even if that new person is incredible. Like even if they're insane, like amazing, like for me to get somebody new, I have to like, it's a leap that I have to make, and I make it, but it certainly is a leap.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for the record, Darcy's pretty scary. So we've all been in that, we've all been in that situation. Yeah, I remember thinking when I was younger that, you know, it didn't really matter what the personalities were like. If people were great, it was going to be great, and realizing the hard way that that doesn't necessarily work. I remember in Chicago working with a pianist who was a total ass, but thinking, but he was probably still to this day I consider one of the best pianists I've ever heard. But one time he came to a gig and he read a comic book through the whole gig while he was playing.
God.
And I thought that was a little bit disrespectful. So
yeah. Yeah, I learned this the hard way too. I think we all start off thinking like, it doesn't matter as long as they're great, like the music will be great. And I learned it the hard way that it really needs to, there's a minimum. Like maybe the line is reading a comic book. Like maybe read a couple pages.
So, you know, we were excited for Ogress to come to McCarter Theater, to come to Princeton, and a bunch of us were super psyched, and then it got canceled, so we were super bummed. But I just want to play this. I'm sure you have other video. All I could find online was what looks like a promo video, but it's still super cool. And maybe after that we could talk a little bit about animation and some of the visual art you're doing and how that relates. You know, how that fits into your whole the artist that is you.
Her skin was chocolate brown. Upon her head she wore a crown of bones, human bones. She lived alone with the birds and the trees, with her memories. was born in a redwood house in the clouds, with a fire always burning and love always returning. Mother held me to the sky, tears of joy in her eye, and sang songs of my beauty, songs that roll down the hill and echoed through the valley. She's big. She's bigger than a tree. She's vast. She's vaster than the sea. She opens her mouth. It's the size of a planet. If you get too close, then she'll fit you right in it. She's big. She's big. She's bigger than a tree. She's vast. She's vaster than the sea. She opens her mouth. It's the size of a planet. If you get too close, then she'll fit you right in it. She's big. She's big. I think we lost the sound.
Was it just me that lost the sound?
No, I lost it too.
Okay.
Is it back?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what happened.
I'm gonna grab some stuff to show. From a distance she looks like a bear, a great grizzly bear. Beware, beware, beware. That video's old. We need to update it. We've been pitching to, I'll just say it. So we pitched the concept to Amazon Studios, and as it happens with these things, they seemed to be excited, and then emailed a few days later like, it's too dark, it's too niche, it's not for us. And basically during this entire pandemic, I've been doing as many Zooms as possible, trying to pitch it, trying to get a meeting with Netflix, we'll see. Had a good one with Neon. I don't know if you guys know Neon. They did a movie called Parasite. Does that ring any bells?
A great movie. Yeah.
And they seemed excited, but this is such a strange and weird process. I mean, and frustrating because, you know, it's sort of Hollywood, and people want a celebrity. People don't understand that it's one person singing all the roles. Some people have been like, well, what if John Legend sang a little bit of it? Or like, what if it was John Legend and Rihanna? I'm like, no, that's not really what we're trying to do here. And then the animated aspect of it is very difficult because there hasn't been a sort of animated movie in a while that's been not for kids in the US, and not independent. So it's been a challenge, and also it's also a musical. It's animated. It's not really for kids. There's probably going to be some nudity in it. So how do we pitch it? How do we sell it? It's been a challenge, but it's been really exciting, and I feel like we're getting closer. But I also know of certain movies that, like animated movies, that took maybe 10 years to make. So I'm ready for that too.
It's not for kids.
It's not for kids, but it's not for kids.
Yeah, you can't check that box on YouTube. Was this made for kids? Well, not really. But what was the last like American animated movie for adult? Maybe Heavy Metal, some Ralph Bakshi film, probably, right? Like Heavy Metal or American Pop. Those are from like the mid 70s, late 80s or something.
Yeah.
So are you animating this?
I'm doing some initial sketches and sending them to an animator named Leah Bertels. If I would love to send you a thing. I mean, I'll do that later. Maybe you can share it of a trailer of her work because it's beautiful, and I think it really would look like it. She would make this come alive in a really great way. So, yeah.
Wondering about when you're playing different roles within this piece, are you intentionally changing vocal colors? Like, how are you thinking about that, or are you more thinking about perhaps the emotional perspective of that person, or that, you know, of that perspective at that moment, and then allowing your voice to respond accordingly? I don't know if I'm asking.
Yes, I think it's number two. I think with Darcy, we also talked about just changing keys to songs so that it could naturally feel like it was a different character, making certain things a little lower, certain things a little higher. But I try not to exaggerate that too much because I feel like that would be a little distracting. So certainly leading with like the emotion of it and the expression of it. And when we're performing it, I've been trying and sometimes failing, but trying to have a physical relationship to the characters, making sure that, for instance, the narrator is straight on and is looking at the audience like from a really central place. The bounty hunter is maybe looking up to the right. I think that's what's happening, or maybe to the left. I don't remember. The ogress is looking down because she's so big. So trying to remember, and sometimes there are a few songs where, well, there's one song in particular where it cuts from one character to the other to like deep, 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 deep. And so I'm trying to like remember when I'm singing it, what side I'm on. Sort of like a puppet. Is it a puppet show or like a mime? I guess, I don't know. But the narrator always comes back and like brings us back to like, okay, this is what's happening, guys. Like, but I should say about it that I think you need to see it like twice, maybe. See it once, read a libretto, and then see it again, and then you get the story. It's hard. Some people have gotten the story by one sitting, but I mean, I remember my mom telling me she saw it 3 times, and she was the 3rd time was like, oh, now I finally get what's happening with all these people. I mean, it's not that many characters, but it's enough that you have to hang on for sure.
How many times has it been performed? Is it a lot?
6.
Okay, so not a lot.
6.
Including the
7?
one at Angela Davis's house. Does that count?
7.
I think that's 7. I think with the Angela Davis performance was the 7th time.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh my God, I would have loved to have been there for that.
Right.
And just your engagement with visual art, and you're making art. You're doing this painted textiles. Some really cool stuff. Obviously, visual art is very important to you. As far as making your own art, is that something you studied formally, or is it something you've just kind of got into and experiment and
self-taught, got into, experimented, still figuring out a lot of stuff, and like trying to learn different techniques, like whether it's in drawing but also in textiles. I brought some stuff. I'll show you guys some stuff if you're interested. Okay.
Very much so.
So this is like a new drawing.
You can tell that's what I was looking at. I was like, what's on the computer screen? That's hot.
Orthorexia. That's a great word. Did you make up that word?
I did not make it up. Hold on. Sorry, I forgot I locked the door. I'm on the Zoom.
It's kind of like MTV Cribs, right?
Right?
I want to know what's in those cupboards back
Should
there
I
in the
show who
kitchen.
you are?
No, I don't want people that
Hey!
This is Sullivan Fortner.
Yay, good to see you.
Hands.
I know.
Okay.
Wash your hands.
Okay, so that's one. That's another. Orthorexia is it's the thing where it's like an eating disorder, but you're just eating super healthy, so it makes it okay, but it's like to a disorder. It's one of them. To me, it's a very fascinating eating disorder. It's like very.
It's one
that one and chew and spit is really wild.
Wow.
Where you just chew and spit. I kind of like that one. I mean, I don't like it, but I might have tried it once. So anyway, so these are like this is an unfinished one. You can't. I like to do stuff that's gonna take a long time, and this one is certainly gonna have to get through all of it. And this is all with like a ballpoint pen. And so those are the drawings, and they kind of set me up for ideas to do the embroidered stuff. So this is one of them. So this is embroidered on like old linen from the 1800s. But then I do embroidery on organza too. This is a really big one, so it would be impossible for me to show the whole thing, but I can try to move back as much as I can, I guess. Hold on. I'm like trying to.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And little details. And this takes a really long time, obviously. This takes a lot longer than, like this guy maybe took, I don't know. Like these 3 guys, it must have been like 5 days, 3 days, 3 days. I'm exaggerating. No, I'm exaggerating. It's an hour a guy. That's 1 day. If I'm good. This is really time consuming, this kind of vibe. But I find that I care more about it if it's taken a really long time than if I did it quickly with ink and paper. This is a big one, but let me move this back. Let's see if this works like this. Can you see anything, or am I?
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Am I blocking it? There's smaller ones. Somebody's getting a snack in the back.
I saw that in your Instagram. So how I mean, obviously, you're a creative person and you're operating, firing on multiple cylinders. Like, is there ever an issue of balancing how you balance what you're working on?
I really feel like I'm a jack of all trades kind of person. Like I don't really have the patience to like focus on one thing and really try to get good at it. And so often I try to just not even master it, just I try to understand like really basic rudimentary technique on whatever it is. And then once I've done that, I shift my attention to something else quite often. I'm trying to fight against that impulse, but yeah, the day is split, I would say, between sitting at the piano or like trying to write something for not a very long time. It's never a very long time. Or doing this stuff.
That's great. Well, it seems to be working for you.
Well, I don't know.
And last time I talked to you were just getting into stop motion, I think. How's that going?
I gave up.
That seems incredibly time consuming and
no patience for it. I did like a 10-second clip.
And did that take like 2 days to put
fuck this. It took so long. I had to like sculpt the little, I bought these little clay things, multicolored, took a bunch of pictures, like, and I ended up with 10 seconds. And I was like, man, no, I'm not doing this. Some like other people do that and love it. Let them do it. I'm not doing it. But I love stop motion so much. And sometimes it's just like, I have these ideas for stuff, but oof. Maybe I'll try again. But it's always the thing where you're like, I'll try this. I can try this. And then as you're in it and you're taking your 100th picture and sculpting the thing, you're like, why did I think I could do this? Who said that I could?
And all the
embark on this
saying, welcome to Princeton.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Do 100 things at one time.
Yeah.
Well, Cecile, it's been really awesome to have you here. We're so grateful that you came to visit. Does anyone have any last questions here? Cecile's given us a good 2 hours here, which is incredibly generous of her.
I feel like it's generous of you guys.
Mode, just so that the video that I'm recording, I can see everybody at once. Well, we definitely appreciate you being here, and like I said, one of the things, my takeaways have been the genuineness and the importance of authenticity in your release of artistry has been like, this is who I am, this is what I do, I'm in process, and I continue to evolve, and I'm okay with that. And that's been my takeaway from this experience, which has been, I hope, something that everyone can attribute to and make them feel like, okay, I'm in process, and I'm still in process, and that's okay, and not feeling like I have to be this predefined this is what I'm supposed to be. You came in, you were like, well, you know, which was awesome. And, you know, and I hope it gives some people, you know, a little bit of space to give themselves a break and allow themselves to enjoy the process just a little bit more. Okay.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I wish that I felt that way. I wish that I enjoyed the process more. And I think it's a good resolution for all of us, probably.
Yeah. So can everybody take themselves off of mute and let's give her some love, please. Take yourself off mute. Yep.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Cecile. This was amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thanks,
So,
Darcy.
Cecile, we have Christian McBride next week. Is there anything we should tell Christian from you?
I
figured what
no.
we're going to do, we're going to try to pass a message from this week's guest to next week's guest and see how we end up by Thanksgiving.
Oh, shit.
It could be anything, like you need to brush your teeth. Like, I mean, it could be...
Why didn't you call me back?
Why did you call me?
Yeah, tell him that. Why didn't you call me back?
Okay. I'm excited. It's like we're playing
He's gonna frantically.
this extended version of telephone or something, right?
That's so. Like you guys are gonna have so much fun with him. That's great. That'll be great.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Cecile. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing you and seeing you. You know, we have a. Once we get out of COVID, we're going to go back to having these guest artist residencies where we bring someone in for a week at a time, and they can visit lots of different, you know, departments across campus and work with students. And we would love to have you do that. So we will be in touch with that. You know, after the vaccine comes out, we'll will definitely be in touch.
Maybe we'll all get vaccinated together. Wouldn't that be nice?
That could be a piece, actually.
Watch, but you know, I'm taking second round.
I like that idea. Round robin vaccinations. All right, and thank you everyone for tuning in. This is really great, and you know, this is kind of an experiment, but I appreciate you guys all being here and taking part. So. If I don't see you sooner, I'll see you next Sunday. Trinice, thank you so much. And Cecile, thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. Have a good week.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.